to discuss introducing buffer zones outside abortion clinics in Scotland in order to protect workers and service users at termination clinics. The UK government says it's reviewing the issue in Wales and England. So let's get a view from both sides of the debate. First of all, with Sarah Kirkpatrick, the CEO of Welsh Women's Aid. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, no, thanks for coming on. Do you think these buffer zones should be introduced at clinics in Wales?
It's a sad state of affairs when we have to ask the question, should there be buffer zones? But I believe that we should absolutely, if necessary, have buffer zones. At the point of crisis, somebody does not deserve to run the gauntlet. Also, there are workforce issues, so the staff who actually work in the clinics need to be able to get to work safely and without feeling harassed and bullied at that point. So I'm sad that we even have to have the conversation. But yes, if necessary, we should be having a buffer zone, a safe route for people to seek support when they need it.
And that's the question for you, really, Sarah. You say if necessary. Is it necessary? Are there instances of women feeling harassed or intimidated in going to an abortion clinic?
Unfortunately, there are, yes. So there are still, even in this country, there was a buffer zone set up in 2018, and there was an expectation that there would be more set up. In 2020, the government committed to looking at it further. And yes, sadly, people do have to run the gauntlet about the point where they're seeking help, having to walk past or walk through people who are asking them not to make a choice. And that flies in the face of a society that respects bodily autonomy and respects women's need to access health resources.
Yeah. We're going to speak to someone next, actually, from a group who do protest outside clinics. Now, what they say is that they're offering help and support, and that there's no discussion of alternatives once women go down the route of having an abortion. Once they're in that clinic, the alternatives aren't discussed. What would you say to that?
I would say that I'm sure those arguments are articulated beautifully, but the point would be that having a demonstration so close to the door of a clinic is incredibly distressing, both for staff and service users. The need for a buffer zone is disappointing. It should be incumbent on those who wish to make a reasoned debate to not put women experiencing distress or trauma on the front line of that discussion.
They also point out that there's already a law against harassment that protects women from intimidation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Which sort of raises the question whether somebody should even be picketing or protesting outside those gates, but also raises the question of, should someone who is experiencing distress then need to make a further complaint about distress and harassment? So I think it's those low levels of distress that we should be thinking about at a time when someone's already in a difficult situation.
Yeah, and do you think the Supreme Court ruling, and when we heard from Barbara Pletasher there at the beginning of this segment about the tension in the United States, is that going to transfer that sort of atmosphere, or certainly the discussion? Is that going to have an impact on what's happening here?
I sincerely hope that the discussion will continue about women's right to choose and women's bodily autonomy. I also sincerely hope that it does not affect the policy situation here in the UK. It's already hard enough for women to access health resources within the UK. Not all citizens have equal access to abortion here in the UK. There are sensible safeguards in place. This is not something that people go into lightly. So I do hope that it doesn't change or inflame the atmosphere of what is already a very difficult conversation for people to have.
Sarah, thank you very much. Let's speak to Isabel Vaughan-Spruce then, campaign director at the anti-abortion charity 40 Days for Life, who protest outside abortion clinics. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning, Oliver.
Well, tell us exactly what you do then outside these clinics and why you go there.
Yeah, so thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak about it. So just to make it clear, we're not there to protest. We're there. I run a campaign in Birmingham, and we stand in groups of 2 or 3, and we're simply there to offer an alternative to women going in who might be experiencing or feeling a bit of a crisis in their pregnancy. So there's all sorts of help and support that we can offer them, and we know many, well over 100 women who've accepted this help and support that was offered to them at the very last minute, and they didn't know where else to turn. But we're also there for people who've had an abortion who might be hurting afterwards, and we can direct them to where they can get maybe some healing and some peace after they've made that decision.
Why then do some women feel intimidated by it at what must be a very difficult and a very traumatic time in the first place, and as Sarah was saying, then have to run the gauntlet to get into the clinic?
Well, I would question whether you can call it running the gauntlet if there's 2 people there saying, can we offer you any help? There's a lot of people that are saying women are feeling harassed and intimidated, but whether they actually are, I mean, we're there trying to be approachable. So it's in our best interest to make ourselves that way. We want women to talk to us, and people do frequently stop to chat to us. And also, every time this is reported in the media, and I'm not saying with your radio station, but with a lot of newspapers and things like that, we hear very false impressions of what's going on. I know our group personally, I've heard and I've seen articles saying how we, shout murderer at women and run down the street after them, things I'd want to run a mile from. But women do pick up on this. They read these articles and they really think that might happen. And I would say it's those sort of things that are making them feel a bit worried.
Yeah. Well, you're here, Isabel, you're here to tell us the truth this morning. And do you support the woman's right to choose? Because that's the law in this country, isn't it? A woman's right to choose your body, your choice.
So I'm anti-abortion right from the moment of conception. I agree that every human life has value, no matter what their disability, no matter how they were conceived. But at the same time, we are not preventing women from making that choice to have an abortion. We're there to simply offer an alternative to them and make sure that they know what the choice of abortion really entails as well.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it, which is that, yes, there to explain the alternatives. But given the position that you start from, it could also be seen that you're there to persuade them not to do it at the very last moment when, as I say, it's traumatic, it's difficult. I don't know what sort of state I would be in that situation, whether you are best placed to offer that advice.
I believe every woman who's going for an abortion should have that alternative presented to them, and our leaflets are available for people to see, which detail the help that is available. I believe every woman should know that. I mean, we could also question the motives and alternatives of abortion providers, which clearly make money from abortions. But as I say, if we were handing out information which was untrue in any way, then I think it would be clear that we could be stopped doing that. But people have looked at our leaflets. As I say, we've had our leaflets checked by doctors before we're handing them out to make sure that there's nothing in them that's anti-science, anti-medicine. But I do believe that those women deserve an opportunity to have another alternative. And as I say, many do.
But so, yes, if you do ultimately support a woman's right to choose, do you share Sarah's dismay at what's happened in the United States, where for so many women now they won't have that choice?
No, I don't support a woman's right to have an abortion because I don't believe that is a right. I don't believe anyone has a right to take away the life of somebody else. Science tells us now, and science has moved on so much since maybe when these laws were first in place, particularly here in 1967. We can clearly see the humanity of a child in the womb. I mean, we have children who are born 22, 23 weeks in this country, and yet right up until 24 weeks, a woman is allowed an abortion for any reason at all. And right up until birth, for things like Down syndrome or club foot, there's a profound discrimination there that after 24 weeks you're allowed to abort a child if the child's got a disability. I mean, what's that saying about children or people that have disabilities.
Is this not about the woman, though? Is this not about the woman and the woman's right to choose what to do with her body?
First of all, it's not her body. It's another child's body. And I think we would recognise that law always puts limits on what we can do with our own bodies. I don't have a right to do whatever I want with my body. A man doesn't have a right to do whatever he wants with his body when it's impacting another body. And I think that should still apply in pregnancy as well. I don't think pregnant women should have a right to do whatever they want with their body. And I think it's not really helping them. Just the other day, last week, I had somebody who was a victim of sex trafficking call me. She'd say she's in a safe position now. But she'd been coerced and forced into having multiple abortions. And she was saying, I can't understand how being pro-abortion is portrayed as feminist. It's the most anti-woman position to take. Abortion facilitates that kind of abuse that she'd been through because it helps cover up the behaviour of sexual predators.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Isabel Vaughan-Spruce. There we heard both sides of the argument. Isabel Vaughan-Spruce from 40 Days for Life, and before that, Sarah Kirkpatrick, the CEO of Welsh Women's Aid. Let's have a look at the newspapers then. And this break.